You will need to analyze the United States plans to create a golden dome, what kind of dome it will be, and against which threats it will be directed. I have no doubt that our military will be closely monitoring and analyzing these plans.
Russia's deputy foreign minister has made a striking statement regarding the future of the New START treaty, the last surviving nuclear arms control agreement between Moscow and Washington. Sergey Ryabkov declared that nothing will replace the New START treaty once it expires in February, signifying Moscow's readiness to move into a post-treaty era of strategic competition. The New START treaty, long considered a cornerstone of global nuclear stability, is the final remaining accord limiting nuclear weapons between the United States and the Russian Federation. Under its terms, both countries are restricted to deploying a maximum of 1,550 nuclear warheads each, with strict verification mechanisms to ensure compliance and transparency. In September 2025, President Vladimir Putin proposed that Russia would continue to adhere voluntarily to New START limits for 1 year after its official expiry on February 5, 2026. However, Putin made clear that such self-compliance would apply only if the United States agreed to uphold the same nuclear restrictions during that period. In October 2025, US President Donald Trump described Putin's offer as good, though Washington has not formally accepted or rejected the proposal, according to multiple reports. As the expiration date now looms, Deputy Minister Ryabkov told TASS news agency that Moscow views the end of the treaty as inevitable, with no negotiations presently aimed at renewing it. Ryabkov added that Russia remains fully capable of ensuring its national security and strategic deterrence even in the absence of any formal arms control framework with the United States. Sergey Ryabkov said, quote, "Nothing, in the sense that there will be nothing to replace it. And nothing, in the sense that our security will still be guaranteed. Even in the absence of the treaty, which, by the way, we suspended due to the dramatic worsening of Washington's policy toward Russia, as well as serious deviations by the US side from the treaty's requirements, which we have repeatedly spoken about even with the administration of Biden." Unquote. Moscow had previously suspended participation in New START in 2023, citing then-President Biden's military and financial support to Kiev amid the escalating war in Ukraine. Russia, Ukraine, and the United States held 2 days of high-level trilateral talks in the United Arab Emirates, part of an ambitious diplomatic effort to explore possible terms for ending the ongoing war. Despite sustained engagement over 2 sessions, both Kiev and Moscow concluded the US broker discussions on January 24 without achieving a breakthrough or signing any formal agreement. Official statements released after the meetings made no mention of a specific deal, though representatives from all sides indicated an openness to continue dialogue in the near future. An anonymous diplomatic source told Russia's TASS news agency that the three-way talks had produced some results, though the details of what was achieved remain undisclosed. According to Axios, Ukrainian officials described the talks as positive, suggesting modest progress and a measured optimism that further discussions could yield tangible outcomes. Meanwhile, CNN reported that US officials viewed the Abu Dhabi negotiations as having surpassed expectations, noting the unusually cooperative tone among the participants. American negotiators told the network that the mood within the room was very upbeat, positive, and constructive, a rare assessment given the deep divisions that have long defined the conflict. Central to the agenda were 2 complex issues: the future political status of the Donbass region and the ongoing exchanges of missile and drone strikes on critical energy infrastructure across Ukraine. In a follow-up video released on January 25, Russian officials said that American negotiators appeared to be pushing against time, suggesting Washington sought quick diplomatic progress ahead of upcoming global summits. The senior aide to Russian President Putin also spoke about US President Donald Trump's latest Greenland deal with NATO and America's ambitious Golden Dome plans.
The talks began yesterday at 23:30. Why so late? Is it not logical to move them to the morning and have the discussions with a fresh mind, as they say?
There is high momentum. The Americans, as mediators, are pushing against time. They are in a hurry. It's understandable. Considering the importance of this topic, of course, our President, Vladimir Putin, is absolutely disinclined to pay attention to the time of day when such serious negotiations are underway. Additionally, there was an agreement that, in fact, the next day, working groups on security would already be holding talks in Abu Dhabi. These groups were supposed to receive instructions. Therefore, the meeting with US envoy Steve Witkoff was so important.
Are we getting anywhere at all? Trump keeps saying yes, and soon, any moment, maybe we'll make some deal. Is there even any indication?
We have been saying from the start that a very difficult and lengthy path lies ahead. That it's not a quick road. The essence of the matter is that in Anchorage and on the eve of Anchorage, a certain formula for resolving the territorial issue was developed, and now it is very important to implement it. Once this happens, swift progress can be ensured.
One ally is trying to annex territory from other allies. Those, in response, call it a hungry caterpillar. Correspondence between presidents is published. What kind of world are we living in now?
In a world that has dramatically changed and continues its trajectory of change. What you said, I would start from the end, publication of correspondence. You know, what's very interesting is that all Europeans literally rose up in arms when Trump published his correspondence with Macron. But when Macron published a conversation with Putin, no one reacted. All these changes are probably a result of the double standards and hypocrisy that have dominated Europe for many decades and, unfortunately, of the poor generation of politicians currently in power in Europe. They are unable to stand up to Trump's assertiveness. Trump is an experienced politician, one who bases his approaches on business principles, of harsh, ruthless business, and he defends his interests, first and foremost, and the interests of his country. The methods he uses do not quite correspond with our approach to a multipolar world. Trump is still a proponent of bringing everyone to their knees, of solving everything through force. He says he uses force to make his decisions. In our view, he bends others to his will. And those who bend will continue to bend. The main thing is not to do this ourselves.
And now, for example, Canada has suddenly made a statement in which it essentially echoes Putin's words and says that, yes, we have used certain rules of the world order to our advantage when it was beneficial to us, and we have not used them when it was not.
And for which they were immediately punished by having their invitation to join the Peace Council for the Gaza Strip withdrawn. I don't know how much this is painful for Canada, but that Canadians are in for a major headache, I can presume with a high degree of certainty.
Zelensky made a statement to the Europeans. What was that all about? He mentioned that the US is wiping its feet on them, Europe, and so on. But they are already financing him more than the US.
You know, the Kiev regime is ready to bite the feeding hand and the giving hand, bite anyone.
I am already thinking about what they could say to Trump. And it all comes down to the fact that Europe is now critically dependent on American energy, having shut the door on Russian energy.
Indeed, having gotten rid of the ephemeral dependency on Russia, they have now found themselves dependent on the USA. Because dependency on Russia was ephemeral, it was mutual dependency. We, as sellers, depended on them, they depended on us as buyers. Meanwhile, we operated under tough global competition. And now, having consciously given up one of the world's main sellers, they have become dependent on another main global seller, which dictates the terms. You fall into a trap, but others build that trap for you. It's something else, they made this themselves with their own hands.
Politicians, as the saying goes, know to never say never, and what they seem to have done to themselves, is this some sort of negative selection? Why are they like this?
Unfortunately, it's a degeneration of politicians in power. This affects the entire system of international relations. Yes, they are incompetent. How can we discuss anything with European Commission Vice President, Kaja Kallas? After all, we will never discuss anything with her, nor will the Americans, and that is obvious. What can be done? We just have to wait for her to leave. Or, in light of everything that is happening, the EU leadership. Name anyone you like, but there are no political visionaries there, so to speak. They are some functionaries, illiterate, incompetent, unable to look into the future and unable to understand today's coordinate system.
After all, they constantly talk now about some protection from Russia and China. And is there not a danger that at some point the whole story of the supposed annexation of Greenland will lead to all this energy being directed against us, and they will all then turn against us?
This all needs to be deeply analyzed. We do not yet know what deal will be executed regarding Greenland. News came after President Trump's meeting with Mr. Mark Rutte. But if you ask yourself what relation does the NATO Secretary-General have to Denmark or Greenland, you will likely not have an answer. None. And how could Mr. Rutte decide the fate of the Danish kingdom? It's also unclear. Many strange things are happening. Then, you will need to analyze the United States plans to create a golden dome, what kind of dome it will be, and against which threats it will be directed. I have no doubt that our military will be closely monitoring and analyzing these plans.
Probably not everyone here understands that Greenland, being at the North Pole, practically borders with us. Everyone thinks it's somewhere very far away.
Of course. It's a strategic location from the perspective of strategic security, and of course, I do not want to say who might threaten Greenland, but its significance in terms of strategic stability and security is undeniable.